Well, hey guys, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. Here we are at the beginning of a new year. Thank God.
2021.
2021. We're 4 days in and it feels fine.
Feels fine. I just realized something.
What?
2021. Do you know what that means? Next year, I turn 70.
Wow, baby.
Yeah.
You're smoking hot.
Let's
70,
pray.
Tim. Let's pray. I don't know. If I start praying, you may fall asleep.
Huh? It's time for a nap.
Tim, we got to start the show. It's not nap time.
Yeah, that's a reality just hit me.
Yeah, I know.
20,
I know. You're the most
21.
active 70-year-old, almost 70-year-old I've ever met. You know, another thing about 2021
What?
is the beginning of the new year was the first time in history we've all been able to look back and hindsight really was 2020. Hey, think about that.
And then there's another way of looking at it. Ready? This is an old man joke.
Okay.
So we are now in, think about this, 2021. WON.
What?
2021. It beat us.
It's a winner.
It beat us. We're beat down. That's not even a good joke. I wish I
I'm
hadn't
gonna
even
have
shared
to
it.
marinate on that, ruminate, as they say.
2021.
Oh no, we won. We're the winners.
Oh yes,
we
for
had
sure.
the best Christmas in spite of all of the.
You didn't like my old man joke.
Well, it took me a minute. That's
Yeah.
why it's an old man joke.
Yeah,
It's
that's
one of
right.
those you look and you scratch your chin and you're like,
You know, my dad used to tell jokes, and I'd go, "Why is that even funny?"
Right, but it was to him.
Yeah,
back in the day.
Never was to me.
80
And
years
your dad
ago.
tells the same jokes.
I know.
every day.
It's true. It's a generational thing. Someday our kids, actually already the kids make fun of my jokes.
And your
so.
mom laughs as though she never heard it before.
Yeah, it could be 3 times in one day. That's an old person thing too, because she really can't remember.
Wow.
Hey,
That's yeah.
I mean,
I'm
I've
having a
had
hard
days
time.
like that.
I'm having a hard time remembering.
Well, our Christmas was awesome. Thanks for
Yes, it
asking.
was.
It really was
They did
delightful.
ask, too.
Speaking of the folks, I will say the one glitch for Christmas this year that was painful was that we normally have my folks and in-laws and, swinging through town. And sadly, because of COVID this year and the numbers in freaking California, we were not able to have them here. They made that choice. So
Yeah, and that was wise.
it was wise.
That's,
It's just
yeah,
sad. But
yeah.
but outside of that,
We have family.
we had a great time with family. It was awesome.
Yeah. So that's the thing about COVID. Not everybody could have their families together. So it's a
yeah.
bummer. But anyway, we're grateful. And we had a good year. So we
had a
got
great
through
year.
it. It was
Yeah.
a lot of at-home time.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of at-home time? And, I'm just glad it's over. But now we've got the vaccine. And if enough people
That's a
get
whole
that,
episode in
Yeah,
itself.
if enough people get that vaccine, we'll have herd immunity. So there you go.
Yeah, and maybe down
Maybe
the
not.
road we'll learn about that vaccine, and everybody will wish they hadn't taken
Yeah.
it. But that's another
Got
episode.
an arm growing out of your neck. What's that? You got a goiter growing there? Nope, that's a hand.
That's 2020,
That's
baby. That's my 2020.
That's my
Sign.
vaccine hand. Yeah.
Anyway, well,
So
you know
we're-
what? I was going to say,
Go ahead.
Hope Rescue had a great year. In
Yeah, we
spite
did.
of all of it, podcast numbers have been up for everybody because more people have time to listen. So for us, the plus was that ministry-wise, this is a huge part of our life is the podcast, and there's other things as well, which Tim will share. But thank you so much for 2020 and for your time and your attention, for your letters, for your support, which has been incredible. Thank you for making it possible for us to be able to be a part of your lives, to share some of the things we've learned by our own experience, some of the wins and a lot of the lows. And we're just grateful that you have lent your ear and have given us the encouragement and the support that we needed to keep on going.
Yeah, we have 25,000 downloads to the
incredible.
podcast, so that's amazing. But also, what you may not know is that we at Hope Rescue, we have the Hope Rescue podcast. We also do food distribution, and about 2,000 to 3,000 people receive food every month through our ministries. But also, we do not have federal funding. We have no grants. This is all based on the gifts that people give. So as Kimberly thanked you for supporting us by listening, but also many of you have supported by financially supporting us. And we want to encourage you, if you are feel like you want to be a part of the Hope Rescue family, you can go to hoperescue.org. Now, if you punch in hoperescue.org, it'll go right to our website. But if you just put in a search, hoperescue.org, it'll take you to dog rescue and all that in the UK. So you have to drill down and find us. We're working on those search engines. But
or follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and that'll take you right there as well.
That's
the
true.
Links are all in there, and it makes it easy.
Yeah, and what we want to encourage you to do, you'll see a donate button. If God lays it on your heart to donate, we would love to receive your help in reaching out to families that are hurting. Some of our ministries we've had to hold off because of COVID. We haven't been able to do the support ministries and so forth. But we would love to have your support. HopeRescue.org or HopeRescuePodcast.org will get you there, and you can help out.
So the cool thing is, a lot of folks don't know that with the outreach wing of Hope Rescue, the podcast itself, it's HopeRescueOutreach.org. We have a separate outreach. And so we have a separate website. For the outreach wing.
Wow, I don't
Hope
even know
Rescue
this.
Outreach, yeah. We do. We even we have a
just
separate.
Go to, let's not confuse them, hoperescue.org.
What I wanted to say, though, is that we do have a presence also with the outreach on Instagram and Facebook as well.
That's where you're talking
and
about.
those have links, but you'll get to see pictures and visuals of part of the opportunities that you've been involved in if you've been a giver in this last year in 2020, which we all know that there's been a lot of families at risk. And so we've been able to be involved in feeding between 2,000 and 3,000 people this last year through that outreach. And so we just thank you. Thank you for considering us. Thank you for supporting us. And thank you for the future support that you'll be giving us down the road.
Okay. What we're going to talk about. Starting out January 4th, 2021, we're going to talk about something very important and a topic that sounds negative, but it's very positive, and that is conflict resolution.
Yes.
Now, a lot of us, and notice I said us, are conflict avoiders. And conflict avoidance is this idea, kind of the fear of upsetting people, this idea that we don't want our reputation to be hurt by that. So this fear keeps us from dealing with things. You got to choose your battles. Some things don't need to be confronted.
Right.
Most things probably can go without being dealt with. They're small enough, they're insignificant. But if there is a conflict in your heart, in your relationships, your friendships, your marriage, your relationship to your children or parents, coworkers, you need to deal with those. Yeah. So if you're an avoider, we kind of want to talk about that before we get into a little bit of insight about conflict resolution. But you have to realize conflict avoidance does not work. The conflict remains. If you don't deal with it, the person who is hurting you, either in reality or in perception, in your perception or in reality, it remains there. You've got to resolve it. And a lot of times it's misunderstanding. So you need to go with them. But most of us struggle, I think, with conflict avoidance.
We do. And there's a good reason for that. I mean, I think like Tim just said, it's important to choose your battles, because I think we've come through a year that has been very inflammatory and conflict, it has
and we're
been
together all the time.
And that's just obviously in our homes, but also through the media and all those things. It's been a high conflict year. Yeah. So that's why this conversation is so important. However, I think the balance of that is, like you said, is choosing your battles, because for a lot of folks who are in a working relationship or whatever, they may have a minor conflict with a coworker in passing, and you can just let that go.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is a situation that has seemed unresolvable and is affecting you deeply. It's important to not ignore it. My nature is to be let it go.
Let it
like
go.
that, like the.
Which I'm very grateful.
Yeah, let it go. Let it go.
Let's keep you in stuffing and me living my life with
best
abandon.
life.
Yeah. No, I actually, what I appreciate about you is that you, in fact, do confront me when there are things that bother you or are hurting our relationship.
Yeah.
And it's causing me to grow.
Just to balance that, though, it's taken years for me to feel comfortable doing that. So my base nature, and probably many out there, we have different members in our family. We always have these conversations because we love to kind of dig deep. But depending on your personality type, your temperament type, what you are on the Enneagram, yada, 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 you like to fly under the radar more than you enjoy conflict. But
go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, it's taken me years to find my voice and to reap the benefits of that. And so I always tell my girls that have a similar bent, find your voice young.
Yeah.
And there's the beauty is that when you do that, and if you do it with grace and strength, it's impactful.
And you get the respect of your partner.
And you get resolution.
Yeah. But one of the things that's so important about stating your journey and your struggle is that person begins to respect what you're going through. And if they don't know, then they just continue to do things that are maybe harmful.
Yep.
A lot of people that have conflict avoidance will use methods such as passive aggressive methods. They will tell jokes or use sarcasm to try to get their point away. It's like the traditional mother says, "Don't worry about it. I don't need to eat. I'll do all the dishes." And, that can happen.
Yeah. And then one day her husband eats his last bowl of porridge because there's poison in it. That went kind of dark.
Yeah, that went dark. But so there's two extremes. Kimberly and I really like this book called Crucial Conversations. And it's actually one of my favorite books on relationships. And they talk about the authors of this book, and it's a team of authors who wrote this, said there's two extremes in avoidance of conflict. The one, why don't you give us one and
the first is one I can relate to, and I kind of mentioned earlier, is avoiding, masking, or withdrawing.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, it's easier to often just avoid the conflict. Well, it feels easier in the moment, or mask what you're feeling, kind of suck it up and stuff it, as you mentioned. Pretend
be
like
okay when you're not.
And then withdrawal, which is, removing yourself from so many situations where people need your voice and need your influence and need your presence in that. And instead you just withdraw.
Yeah. I think on the other hand, as they talk about, so you've got the withdrawing, the avoiding, and then on the other hand, if you have attacking, controlling, and even labeling, calling people names and that kind of thing, those two extremes, those of you listening, I'm holding my hands up like two extremes.
Yeah.
But neither one of those deal with the conflict and the struggle that comes from that conflict. So what we want to do is give 8 things for you to consider about conflict resolution. And we'll just kind of go through these. Excuse me, I got a little burp there.
Little lunch situation.
Great lunch.
Thanks, Rubio's.
Yeah. So why don't you give us?
Yeah. So the first one is conflict is normal in relationships. And when you think about it, it literally began with Adam and Eve.
After the fall.
Right from the get-go, out the gate, right after the fall, we have a conflict between Adam and Eve. And as we were just talking, throwing this around before we started the show, from them to their children, it went from conflict to then murder in the next generation. I mean, things escalated quickly. So that's just part of our flesh nature that we'll always have to contend with.
One of the things we'll be talking about is competition in relationships, how deadly those can be for especially intimate relationships like marriage or siblings with each other. It is a normal human nature. But Adam and Eve, like you mentioned, immediately the first thing they do after they sin, they never had conflict before.
Yeah.
Now they have conflict. They hide themselves from each other. They hide from God, and then comes the blaming.
Yeah.
Adam blames Eve. It's the woman you gave me. She gave it for me to eat. So that's the new fallen nature that we have.
And so
is
we can't
to blame.
be shocked when you're not unusual because you deal with conflict. We all do. And the truth is, if there's no conflict in your relationships, someone's holding back, because it is just normal to have conflict. It's how we deal with the conflict.
Think about we have counseled married couples, and they go, we never fight, we never have arguments, we never have conflict. Okay, which one of you is lying now?
Right.
Either you do have conflict and you're both lying, or if you don't have conflict, somebody's not telling their actual view on things.
Somebody is shut down.
Shut down. And I remember a couple told me that years and years ago, and this is probably 35 years ago, and they had been married for a long time. They said, we've never had a fight. And about 5 years after that, they got a divorce.
Wow.
So they didn't fight, but it was, time for
it's just
departure.
Impossible to have a real relationship without some conflict. That is in regards to parenting and to marriage. Friendships, true intimate friendships have conflict. So that's just part of the deal.
Well, conflict doesn't need to be scary, but here's the unfortunate part is it almost always is. And the reason it is because we're self-protective. Self-protection, I believe, is the enemy of relationships.
Yeah.
And I feel that even in the safety that I feel with you, I feel more safe with you, and you know more of my flaws than anybody.
Same, Tim.
Yeah, so there you go. And yet, when a conflict comes up, when a confrontation happens, I feel self-protective.
Yeah.
I feel defensive.
Well, that's also our flesh nature. Our human nature is nobody wants to be vulnerable and to be hurt. Right. Vulnerability is great if it leads to like healing and wholeness, but there's that fear that the vulnerability is just going to leave you wounded, which conflicts in the past tell us that's possible. So that's why it's so important to handle it well.
So if you think about self-protection, it brings us to the next point, because if you're self-protective and you're going to confront somebody that's self-protective, you have a responsibility to do something. And what's that?
Yeah. So number 3 is create safety. This is so important.
Because the person's self-protective.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The best way to create safety is to keep confidence in the things that you tell each other, and to hold that carefully, and not to share that with other people, to accept others' failures. And that's really important, to just understand that we all have a human nature, and that you're safe with your failures with me, and then not to talk about them. Don't gossip.
Well, when you gossip, think about this. When you gossip about someone to the person you need to deal with, they're going to feel like you're going to betray their confidence. So if you're talking to a gossiper, I'm not going to be vulnerable to somebody who's a gossip. Somebody who's going to tell all my crap.
Right.
I want to be self-protective. Yeah. And if someone is going to make me feel safe, they're going to have to make me feel safe in the very things you said.
Right.
They accept me. They keep the confidence, and they can handle the problem. Some people, you share with them, they can't handle it.
Right.
So,
and in the way you communicate when there's a conflict can create safety. I always have shared with the kids, if you truly want something for someone to really hear what you're saying, you have to create safety in how you communicate it. So your tone matters, how you speak to that person, timing matters, and so that it's not a last minute attack, but to be thoughtfully confronting them or the conflict with truth in love, which is a recipe right out of the Bible, and we always, we often can miss the mark of that, but that should be the goal. And so that they can take that information, because they're not self-protecting. listening,
Yeah.
and they can actually, you've broken down that protection where they feel like there's safety in this vulnerability, and you're sharing more from your heart than out of anger. That's pretty valuable.
So creating safety is for how you communicate. How you receive this is going to be very difficult. So you communicate with somebody, to somebody that they've got an issue that you need to resolve with them, that conflict resolution, but you have to listen. So there are, here I call it the 3 imperatives of conflict resolution. Number 1 is listen. Number 2 is listen. Number 3 is listen. It's like real estate,
So good.
It's location, location, location.
Yes.
But it's listen, listen, listen. Everything that you have to say is not everything that needs to happen in the conflict resolution. What you share is only a beginning of a conversation. If you're just sharing and there's no listening, it's not a conversation, it's a speech.
Yeah.
And if you use speech, number 1, you won't help them to feel safe. If they are not heard, they will not feel loved.
Right. That's so
It's
true.
so important.
Yep.
When you're unable to hear other people's facts or even their perceived facts, maybe it's not even a reality. Well, when you do this, I feel like this. Well, okay, that's how you feel. That's a fact. But when I do that, this is my motivation.
Right.
So you've got to talk through
Yeah.
that conflict. You've got to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing about listening and speaking.
Just to give props to our oldest daughter, Carrie. She's done a lot of study and work on this stuff, and I love this term that she uses about the value of communication is to be curious. Like that's really good.
Yeah.
Like be curious as to why they felt a certain way, or ask questions around why their feelings are hurt, or that's part of being that good listener, like you talked about. And you have a quote that I've always loved, that being a good listener is as close. How does it go?
Being heard is so close to being loved,
That's
most
right.
people can't tell the difference.
Yeah, and that's like a bomb dropper right there. That's so good.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, drop the mic.
So you need to allow other people to be heard. Make sure that they know they're heard. The best way to make sure that people know that they've been heard is to, in a very polite and very wise, careful way, you repeat what they say. You can be really sarcastic, so you don't want to be
That's
sarcastic.
not a win. Yeah.
That's not a win. So they say, you go out 3 nights a week and go golfing or whatever it is, or you go to the bar 3 nights a week, and it makes me feel unloved. So what you're saying is, to actually say it back is a powerful thing, because then they know they are being heard. And so again, remember this in conflict resolution. It's not a speech, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
So there was, in Crucial Conversations, there's a technique, I've used it many, many times, and it takes mental discipline to get my head around it. And I'm going to deal with it briefly. We dealt with this in a previous podcast, probably a year and a half ago. Here we're going into our 3rd year. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's called STATE, STATE.
Write this down if you have a pen close by.
And the S stands for share your facts. So if I have a conflict with my wife, if I have a conflict with you.
If you have a conflict.
If I ever would have had, which obviously we're practically perfect in every way.
Right?
Yeah. That's a Mary Poppins quote. Anyway, so if I have a conflict with you and I share my feelings and I share my perceptions, I may not be sharing my facts. Maybe I should say, you said this. Before I say this is how I feel about it. Before I say I think that you are deceiving me or whatever. Not that you would. So you share your facts, and the next thing is you tell your story or your journey. So what you say is, you said this to me, it makes me feel like this. I'm beginning to think this. Then the third part of STATE, S, share your facts, T, tell your story. And A of state is ask for others' paths. In other words, ask what is your journey? How do you see this? How are you feeling about this? And so forth. And then T of state. So share your facts. S, T, tell your story. A, ask for others' paths or journey. And T, talk tentatively. Really hard for me because I speak in absolutes. I think in absolutes. I get myself in trouble. I hurt my children. I hurt my wife. I hurt a lot of other people because I'm very emphatic. And when you talk tentatively, you are saying things like, when you say that, I wonder if this is what you're thinking, instead of saying, you always do that. You always say that, in these broad brushing statements.
Yeah, big, bold,
and
broad brush.
That's not talking tentatively. And the last one, so that's state, share your facts, tell your story, ask others' paths. T, talk tentatively. And the E, the final letter of state, encourage testing. In other words, I want you to test what I'm saying to you. Is this even true? Is this something you're feeling? Or is this something that seems valid?
Yes.
That is such a great way to deal with conflict.
It is. Yeah, it's been
State.
proven. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a great tool. The 6 is to avoid a transactional relationship. So
that's a tough
this is not just a gender thing, but there are certain personality types that deal with facts and figures, and your relationship is built on something with each person in your life.
Yeah.
So if it's in a business partnership, and your friends, oftentimes conversation will be wrapped around accomplishments in the job, and your friendship just happens to be a piece and a part of that, but really it's a transactional relationship.
Right.
Well, that can cross over into what quote unquote should be intimate relationships in your marriage, with your children. So you speak in directives, in goals, and instead of going backwards to what Carrie had mentioned about being curious, really asking about someone's heart.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this situation?
So a classic transactional relationship is where both parties are seeking to benefit. Instead of saying, I want our relationship to benefit, I personally want to benefit.
Okay.
That's that transactional. But it's also doing business with
it's like
people.
self-serving instead of
self-serving
relationship
and just
serving. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're really in a place where you're trying to win. You're in competition, which is that, and we're running out of time. So maybe the last two we'll share next time.
Let's do that.
I'll just share them to kind of encourage you to listen back next week. Avoid zero-sum relationships. Now, what does that mean?
We'll tell you next week.
Yeah. And then secondly, or last, number 8 is avoid owning your offense. Now, what does that mean? Shouldn't I own my offense? And the answer is no, you should not. So what does that mean? We'll talk about that next week on Hope Rescue Podcast. Thank you for listening to us. We'll continue on talking about conflict resolution. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.